meeting, or rather a phone meeting, of the Governance Committee. You'll have to please bear with us on the voting, because the voting will be slightly different than on if we were all on iPads. So for those of you who don't know me and my name, I'm Councillor Deborah Platt, and I'm the chair of the committee. Councillor Tony G is the vice chair, and he'll introduce himself in a moment. And also present are the officers and councillors who will be asked to introduce themselves in a moment. Please note that this is a live meeting now, so it has been I don't know whether it's been broadcast or broadcast afterwards, so it's being recorded. So mind your P's and Q's. For each item, I will invite members to use their you can't raise your hands now function, so I'll just have to shout out and you'll have to jump in and try not to talk over anybody else who's speaking at the time, to put in their comments or observations on each item. So if you could reference the paragraph in the agenda papers, that would help everybody finding their way to what you're talking about. Our Monitoring Officer, Chris Moister, will repeat the motion before the vote is taken to ensure everyone is aware of what is going on and what's being voted on, and he will also confirm the outcome of the decision. If the technology fails, I hope that it doesn't, because we're all on the phone, we'll have to adjourn the meeting for a few minutes to try to resolve it. If not, we'll get a new date organised. So if I can just confirm everybody's attendance, we'll go down the list. We'll do councillors first and everybody else second. So Councillor G, are you there?
I'm there, yeah.
Okay, Mark Clifford, are you there?
I'm here, thank you.
Welcome, Mark. You're the new member from yesterday, so welcome to your first meeting. Similarly,
thank you,
Gordon France is a new person. Welcome, Gordon.
I'm here. I've been on before, Chair, but I came on again last night.
Good. Welcome back. Yvonne Hargreaves.
Yeah, I'm here, thanks.
Okay, Roy Lees.
Yes, I'm here.
Kim Snape.
Yeah, I'm here.
Councillor Jean Cronshaw's here now, are you?
Yes, I am.
Okay, welcome. I hope you're feeling okay. Charlotte Fitch is our independent member. Are you there, Charlotte?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. And our officers. So we've got Gary Hall.
Yes, Chair, and lovely to see you back.
Thank you. Chris Moister.
Yes, Chair, I'm here.
Great. James Thompson.
Yes, Chair, I'm here.
Thank you. Janice Bamber.
Yes, Chair, I'm here.
Rebecca, is it Aziz Brook?
It is, yes, Chair,
Good.
I'm here.
Ruth is from Democratic Services. You there, because we've heard you.
Yes, thank you.
And Mark Heap, External Auditor.
Yes, here I am, Chair.
Have I missed anybody? Brilliant. We've only got what we need then. So, Janice, this is, I believe, your last meeting. So we just wanted to say up front, as you move to pass this news, thank you for your contribution to the committee, and we want to wish you all the best for the future.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So, apologies. We've got now we've got Peter Ripley, who's the independent member, and Jean Cronshaw has joined us, so she's no longer apologising. So, on to the first item of our agenda, which is the minutes of the meeting from the 22nd of January, so far back. Are there any issues to raise on the accuracy of the minutes, anyone?
If not, I would like to move them as a correct record.
Oh, thank you, Tony. Have we got a seconder?
I'll second it.
Jean, was that you?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Jean. So are we all in favour? Just shout out if you're not. Ooh, silence. There you go, Chris, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. The minutes are approved as a correct record.
Thank you. Right, okay, so we're on to declarations of any interest. So members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any pecuniary interest in respect of any of the matters on the agenda. As this is a telephone meeting, if members have a pecuniary interest, they're requested to leave the call completely rather than just mute their microphone. The member can rejoin the call following the completion of the item. So if you've got a declaration, please shout out now. No? Okay, we'll move on. So item 3, update on 2019-2020 closure of the accounts. To receive and consider the report by the Chief Finance Officer. James, are you there? Do you want to take over?
I am indeed. Yes, thank you, Chair.
This is a very brief report just to update the Governance Committee on the changes to the deadlines, the statutory deadlines, and also note some of the issues that the Council has had with its valuers over the past few weeks. So, quite simply, the statutory deadlines for the accounts got moved back from the end of May for the draft accounts to the end of August, and the final accounts to be signed off managed by the end of November, and that previously, of course, was the end of July. This has given us more time during COVID-19 to as well support the Council through COVID-19, also try and meet these deadlines. We had had, unfortunately, a bit of a setback with the valuers. We couldn't get in contact with them for a number of weeks, and really the valuations of our assets should have been signed off a while ago now. We have since been back in contact with them. We believe they've been furloughed as a result of COVID-19. And we've had discussions with them this week, and they've given us some assurance that they'll have the valuations back to us by the end of July, which should give us enough time to both collate them and get them into the accounts, but also challenge them as per the requirements of the SRC and our external auditors. So we do still hope to meet the August deadline. I believe a provisional meeting has been put in for August for the draft accounts to be signed off by myself and the Governance Committee. And I'll just take any other questions, really.
Can I come in, Deborah?
Yes, have you got questions? Yeah.
Yeah, obviously we're in drastic times now, and I would think if James could keep in contact with you and myself and give us an update as it goes along, I feel sure that the committee would then move the closure of the update, as long as yourself and myself are told.
Thanks, you
know, as it goes along, he keeps us informed.
Okay, thanks, Tony. I'm sure James will do that.
Is that an update on the closure of accounts? Is that an update on the closure of accounts?
Well, just an update on any changes, really, that you've just mentioned there. So if you just drop us a note and update us, that'd be great.
Yeah, I certainly can do.
Okay. Has anybody else got a query? No? Okay, so we're just receiving that report. I'm not sure if Chris wants to take that receipt over.
No, the chair. Sorry, Chair. The report is just for noting, so there's no need to take a vote on that.
Okay. All right then. So we'll move on to item 4, charity and trust accounts. That's on your iPad from page 7 to 14, and back over to James.
Thank you very much, Chair. So in the past we have included the charity accounts in our statements of accounts, but to reduce them from 100 odd pages to a little amount over 100 pages, we decided to take out the charity accounts and present them to governance for approval instead. So that's what the report asked me, really, to the governance committee to approve the accounts that are appended in Appendix A to E. And it's similar to what we've done in the past. And I'll take any questions really on those funds.
Okay, does anybody have any questions?
I think you find it very hard to have a question on that.
Yes, I've got a question.
Right, who are you?
Sure. Councillor Lees.
Councillor Lees, off you go.
Yeah, Appendix A. The total assets right at the bottom, is that a typing error?
Well spotted. I was going to announce that at the end. It's £3 out. That should be 539147 rather than 539144.
Yeah. Thank you.
Can I just ask a quick question, Chair? Councillor Gordon France. The only thing I'm asking, Chair, is I noticed there's a W Parks charity for the infectious disease hospital at Withnell, which is defunct now. What actually happens to that? Is it just a sleeping charity now? That's number 12.
Yes, I think we've explored whether we can move that anywhere else. We haven't got anywhere with that at the moment.
Right. And I noticed there's only sort of £1,700 in there, but obviously it's they're building new properties on there now, so it's defunct. Okay.
We'll review that as well this year to see whether we can do anything with it.
Thank you.
Thanks, James. No more questions?
Move the report be noted.
So Councillor G is removed, not removed, recommended that be agreed.
Seconded, yeah. All agreed. Yeah.
Jean has seconded it. Okay. So over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Chair. There is a recommendation on this report that the accounts presented in appendices A to E be approved. Can I say those in favour?
Councillor Crunch says yes.
Councillor France, yes.
Yep.
G, yes.
Thank you. Any
Councillor
against?
Lees, yes.
Okay.
Councillor Clifford, yes. However, Chair, because of not undertaking training before this meeting, am I allowed to vote?
You are allowed to vote, but it's up to you if you'd rather not. If you feel that you don't know enough about it to be able to vote on that particular issue, so it's up to you. But I think we're carried anyway by the weight of the rest of us. So.
Right. No, I thought I'd just check. Thank you, Chair.
Chris?
Sorry, Chair, that motion has been carried.
Thank you. So we're now on to, where are we on to? Item 5, Audit Progress and Sector Update Report. To receive and consider the report from Grant Thornton, the external auditors. So over to Mark Heaps.
Thanks, Chair. I'll just say a few words, if I may, Chair. What you have in front of you are a series of documents that were originally intended for the March meeting of this committee. Now, obviously, things have moved on a little bit since then. The world's changed, hasn't it? Really. So it's probably been overtaken by events. But the first was the progress report at that stage. Obviously, in terms of updating that. It's probably worth saying, obviously, that we've more or less finalised our interim work, and that will be reported to the next meeting of the committee. But what that report obviously doesn't reflect is the COVID-19 situation. It's probably worth saying a few words about that, Chair, in terms of how it's affected the audit and Grant Thornton. And we, as a firm, have been working at home since the middle of March. We're not allowed to go into our offices or into client premises, so the audits are being done remotely at the moment. And in fact, we've just finished the round of NHS audits, which had a deadline of 25th of June. And in a way, I guess necessity is the mother of invention, and we've been looking at ways of innovating and carrying out audits completely remotely. And we've managed to do that in the health sector, and now, obviously, depending on how things develop over the summer, we'll be looking to employ that kind of approach for local government. So, and that has brought with it a range of challenges. And James has just identified one particular, example of how the COVID situation is affecting people's ability to prepare their accounts and our ability to audit them. But hopefully we can get over that over the summer. Clearly, the deadlines have changed as well, Chair, in reaction to the COVID-19 situation. The external audit, the deadline for the external audit opinion of local government accounts this year has now been moved back to 30th of November at the latest. And as James says, the accounts have to be submitted by the end of, I think it's the end of August, with a view to having an opinion by the end of November. Now, obviously, we're keen to start our audits as soon as possible, but we realise some of the operational difficulties that local authorities are facing, so we'll be working with your officers to ensure that we get over the hurdle of COVID and bring the audit to a conclusion and to the right quality. So that's really where the audit is up to, Chair. The other two documents really, again, seem to have come from another era, really. They're documents from PSAA that were setting the scene in terms of some of the context for the external audit, local authority external audit market. And I suppose that, I wasn't really going into too much detail with all that material, Chair, because it's from PSAA, but I thought it was of interest to members to see that, some of the context that's going on in terms of some of the wider reviews of the audit profession and local authority audit. But as I say, Chair, really meaning to bring it back to the current issue, the COVID-19. We're working through those challenges, and we're carrying on with our work as far as we can on that, and we'll continue to liaise with officers. I was going to leave it at that, Chair.
Excellent. Does anybody have any questions? Ooh, silence, Mark. You've got off there.
Okay. Thanks,
so
Chair.
we're now at the end of the debate on this proposal. Do we have a proposer?
Yeah, I propose that. We received a
Thank you. Do we have a seconder to receive that
I'll
report?
second that. Councillor France, I'll second that.
Okay. Okay, so if we just shout out if we're against it, and then we'll just have to presume that everybody's for it, rather than going through everybody going that way. No shouts. So, Chris, over to you.
Okay, that report has been received, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on to item 6, which is the external audit plan. To receive a verbal update from Grant Thornton, the external auditor. So back over to you, Mark.
Thanks, Chair. Just really building on what I've just outlined in the previous item, Chair. The audit plan isn't available for this meeting, I'm afraid, but will be available for the next meeting. And I don't propose to say a great deal more than that, other than to apologise to members and just refer to my previous comments.
Okay, that's fine. Okay,
well,
so
I propose that we accept that and look forward to the report at the next meeting.
Thank you, Councillor G. So we've got nothing to vote on there, so we'll just jump on to item 7, which is the internal audit, head of audit annual report 2019 to 2020. We need to receive and consider the report from the interim head of shared assurance services. That's a mouthful. So over to you, Janice.
Thank you, Chair. This is the report to summarise the work undertaken by internal audit for the year 2019-20. In this report, it also provides the head of internal audit's opinion on the overall control environment and the adequacy and effectiveness of that control environment for the council. The head of internal audit report is attached to Appendix 1, and the summary of work undertaken is attached to Appendix 2 of the report. The head of internal audit report outlines the overall opinion, as I say, and at page 65, you can see that the internal audit opinion on the control environment is that it is adequate and that the authority can place reliance on controls in place with only some improvements required. So that will feed into the annual governance statement. The head of internal audit report also outlines the percentage of work completed within the year, and that is based on the planned work that was undertaken, which equates to 76.15% of the original overall plan completed, subject to some adjustments. So that was audit reviews that were agreed that would be deferred, and some new audit work that was added throughout the year. The head of audit report does outline some findings from a number of reports at 5.5, 5.6. There was one report with a limited assurance opinion, and that was the Syrian resettlement programme. Management actions have been put in place, and that was largely due to the fact that there was a big change in the governance arrangements regarding it and the legislation. So as the district council were being given information from Lancashire County Council, things were moving, so it didn't always get the information as quickly as they'd like. So, but that is the only limited opinion. Overall, for shared services, there were two of limited opinion, and that was payroll, but that was to do with the contract. All those management actions have been put in place now, and so they've been implemented. And creditors, the creditors review, a further piece of work will be done in this year in order to update on those management actions. And as you can see at page 70, 100% of management actions that were recommended were actually agreed with managers. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, so if anybody's got any questions, shout out. Ooh, Johnny's got off lightly as well.
Yeah, well, I'd like to that we receive the report.
Oh, thank you, Tony. Let me just. So, our recommendation is to note the internal audit annual report, to note the progress of work undertaken on that annual plan, and to note the head of internal audit's opinion on the adequacy and effectiveness of the council framework of governance, risk and control. So that's proposed by Councillor G. Do you have a seconder?
I'll second that. Councillor Gordon-France.
Councillor France. So if anybody wants to object to that, if you can shout out now, please. So we'll hand over to Chris again.
Thank you, Chair. The recommendation that the committee note the internal audit annual report, the progress of the report of work undertaken against the 1920 plan, and the head of internal audit's opinion are noted.
Excellent. So over to item 8, which is the strategic risk register, and we need to receive and consider the report of the Deputy Chief Executive. So over to Rebecca.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the Strategic Risk Register for 2020, which reflects any new or emerging strategic risks facing the Council. The majority of risk categories remain stable for 2020 as mitigating actions have ensured that the risks have been managed effectively and therefore have not escalated across the year. It should be noted that all the risks this year have obviously been reviewed in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic and associated impacts on service delivery. The changes to be noted are the following. So 3 risk levels have been increased this year, which include 2 risks which have shifted from medium to high. These are R6, which is failure to react to changing service demand, and R8, failure to sustain our performance in light of budget cuts. And 1 risk has increased but remains medium, and this is R13, which is damage to the Council's reputation. All of these risks have got mitigating actions in place to control the increase in risk. And then there is also risk R7, which is reduction in satisfaction with the Council, which has been assigned a lower inherent risk rating. Detail on the reasons behind these changes can be found at point 26 of this report. It should also be noted that there's 1 new risk that has been added this year, which is R16, around managing recovery after COVID-19 effectively, and there have also been some changes to some of the definitions of the risks, and these have been highlighted in red in the main table in the report. So happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Anybody's got questions, shout out.
Yeah, I would like a question. Obviously, COVID-19 is the kind of main danger we have or risk we have to the Council. Can you give us a rundown? Are we working well with our partners? Because we've really got to work together as a team in the region to limit the risk of COVID.
Yep, so currently we are looking at a learning piece. So on the back of obviously our emergency response to COVID, we're working with partners to understand sort of what went well, maybe what didn't go so well, and how we can continue to work together really well to minimise the effect for our communities going forward.
Yeah, no, thank you for that.
Any further questions from anyone else? No, so can we just agree that the members note the strategic risks, the controls in place, and the actions planned to further mitigate the strategic risks as set out in Appendix 1? Can I have a proposal for that?
I propose that, yeah.
Okay, we have a seconder for that.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Jean. And over to, do we have anybody who's going to abstain or vote against that? No, so we go over to Chris again.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Members have noted that the strategic risk controls in place and actions planned to further mitigate the strategic risks are set out in Appendix 1.
Great. So over to item 9, which is the Gdpr update. So to receive and consider the report of the Director of Governance, which is Chris again.
It is. Thank you, Chair. I'm just waiting for it to open in front of me.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's not opening. Typical. Right, okay, anyway. Members will recall that we introduced, or the GDPR was introduced nationally in 2018, and the council implemented their obligations under GDPR in May of that year. This report was due earlier this year to provide an update to members as to progress of the implementation, progress of GDPR post-implementation. So can confirm again that GDPR was implemented on time at Chorley. Appropriate policies and procedures were introduced. There have been no changes to the legislation since their implementation, so there have been no significant changes to be made to those policies and procedures, although they are kept under review. The council is also obliged to keep a list of data controllers. Now, there have been staffing changes and that list is currently under review, although that commenced earlier this year. It hasn't been completed, mainly because people have been put onto other tasks and it's been deprioritised in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. Training is another matter that was addressed in relation to GDPR. This was very important. So all staff prior to implementation undertook training modules on the council's e-learning emerge system. That has now formed part of the council's induction process. So all staff all staff undertake some GDPR training, and depending on their level of involvement with data processing, they may have to undertake some enhanced training, and that forms part of the induction process. One of the issues that has been highlighted, although it isn't directly related to GDPR, it is connected, was the treatment of freedom of information requests and the processing of data protection requests. We have introduced now an FOI coordinator role in the organisation, and they oversee the receipt and coordination of responses to FOI requests made by the public. That has shown an improvement in performance in both response times and the quality of the responses. We're also due to have an audit of the council's current GDPR provision. That has been completed, although the report has not yet been finalised. I don't believe there are any significant issues that have arisen that have been identified within that audit, although if there are, no doubt they'll be presented to Governance Committee in the future, but as I say, I don't believe there are. There have been, in 2019, 5 identified data breaches. None of them relate to the most serious category of data, of personal data. There are 2 reasons for these data breaches to have arisen. One is that there was inadequate training for a member of staff, and that's been attended to, and that's one of the reasons why it was it feeds into the induction process now. And the other, but as part of it, we also reviewed the policies and procedures that were overseeing the data processing in those instances, and we're satisfied that the policies and procedures were correct. It's just they weren't being applied properly. None of the breaches were serious enough, though, to warrant reporting to the Information Commissioner's Office. I still can't get the report open, unfortunately. I think I don't think there's anything outstanding then in relation to GDPR. It is intended to do, at least for the next couple of years, an annual report just detailing any compliance issues that have arisen, and obviously with the next report we'll cover off any issues that have arisen in relation to the audit. So I'm happy to take any questions on the report, Chair.
Yeah, has anybody got any queries for Chris?
Well, there were 5 breaches which were at a fairly low level, but it does mean that we've got to keep an eye on it. We've got to get better, because really there should be no breaches. The staff should be adequately trained to know it. So I think there was a little bit of a warning sign in it, and I thought the report from Chris Boyce was very good.
Thank you, Councillor G. No, I agree. I mean, ideally, we'd always aspire to get 0 breaches. I think in reality that the legislation is so prescriptive, it's unlikely that we'll ever go through a full year where there aren't any breaches. It might sound strange, but what I was pleased about, though, was that we identified the breaches ourselves. and so we were able to identify what went wrong and put in place corrective actions. I think 2 of them were related to simply sending letters to the wrong address, which was actually down to a failure on the resident to notify the correct department of a change in address. So the failure is ours as an organisation, but actually when you analyse it, it's hard to be overly critical of the person concerned.
Right, is there any more queries for Chris? Oh,
If not, I recommend that the content of the report be noted.
Thanks for that, Councillor G. Do we have a seconder for that?
I'll second that, Councillor Gordon-France.
Thank you, Gordon. So if you've got any objections or you don't want to vote, please shout now. All quiet. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, that report, the content of that report has been noted.
Great. So, just run up items on there. Just a second. Let me get my other item up. So we're going over to item 10 now, which is the draft annual governance statement. And to receive and consider the report of the Director of Governance. So back over to Chris again.
Yes, Chair, it's me again. I'm sorry to bore everyone. And I'd just like to I thought I was going to be on a video chat, so I have actually put a shirt and tie on, which is very unusual for me. Normally, apparently James is saying I'm not really very sorry about that. Right, yes, the annual governance statement. For those who are new to the committee, just a confirmation as to what it is. The council are required by law to review the effectiveness of our system of governance, and this is the annual governance statement document that's produced, and it forms part of the council statement of accounts, and it's a way we test our governance framework for compliance, both in terms of the policies and procedures, but also the use and application of them by the council in our processes and decision making. The annual governance statement document itself, after the introductory paragraphs, sets out how we comply at section 3 with a number of references to policies and committees and different ways in which the council seek to demonstrate good governance, and you'll find in there reference to things like the information security framework document, which deals with information security and data protection. Section 4 details who has a role in monitoring and how the framework is reviewed. That includes reference to the statutory officers, which are Gary as head of paid service, James as section 151 officer, and myself as monitoring officer, but it also references committees of the council such as governance committee and scrutiny, who all play a role in testing the council and holding it to account to make sure we're acting appropriately. It also includes in that section reference to the head of internal audit, and as Janice mentioned earlier, there is reference in there to the head of internal audit's opinion on the level of assurance that can be given to the public in relation to Chorley's compliance with our governance framework. I'm pleased to say that the council have both a strong framework and strong evidence of compliance with it, and this is detailed at section 5. Technically, section 5 is meant to contain significant governance issues. None have been identified for Chorley, but what we try to do is identify issues and areas of improvement. And in particular, you'll see that there is an action plan that we've brought forward to demonstrate what we've undertaken in the last 12 months, to show items that are carried forward or completed. And you'll see there's a number of items on the action plan from last year that have been completed. There is a separate table showing the action plan for this year, and this is found at page 90, and that includes a consideration of risk management. This has been outstanding from last year, but in part we're looking at refocusing the purpose of the risk management work. The shared services has now been extended with South Ribble, and we're looking at the different risk management system approaches that are taken across the two councils and trying to pick best practice rather than simply developing out the current Chorley Council one. So it's a bit wider than it was last year. Fraud is also outstanding from last year and has been carried forward. That's a piece of work that I expect to be actually completed in the next couple of months, because it's a piece of work that it just got deprioritised. But now fraud is not a major issue. It's not been identified as a major risk to the council, but it's appropriate to review those policies periodically and regularly. But that will be undertaken in the next few months. Transparency, that one's again, it's been carried forward, but there's work that has been undertaken. It just requires implementation. Again, this was due to be done earlier this year, but unfortunately the focus has moved onto other pieces of work. It is not something that the council are failing at, but it is something that can be improved, and that's why we need to get the contracts register up and running. Compliance with the contract procedure rules has been identified. There is a contract management system has been developed. This is something that was done jointly with Chorley and South Ribble, and this will be a start to finish process to enable not only the recording of contracts, but the whole process from the initial decision that a piece of work or a contract needs to be entered into right through to its publication, signing and publication on the Transparency Register. Again, it's a piece of work that we need to implement and then roll out not only the system itself, but also the training for it. There is a new well, I don't want to call it significant risk, but it is something that we need to be aware of. And again, the extension of shared services, there has been a requirement for enhanced governance arrangements to oversee the Shared Services Joint Committee, and there's been a review of the Shared Services Agreement, which will be presented to Council for consideration. It also has to be recognised that there are many senior staff now working across both organisations, including all three of the statutory officers, as in addition to the Chief Internal Auditor, who has been doing for some time. And again, I think we just need to recognise that and ensure that we have sufficient structure and resource in place to ensure that governance, the focus remains on the governance framework, and there is the resource there to ensure that both councils are served properly by those roles. And then finally, just to review the business continuity and emergency plans. Now, that's been highlighted particularly in the last 6 months due to the COVID pandemic. It was nice to hear some observations earlier on how well the council have coped and approached the pandemic work. But I think we have to recognise that there's some learning to be taken out of this. And again, Rebecca mentioned earlier learning with partners, but I think we need to look at what our business continuity plan says and review it and make sure it remains fit for purpose. I can give you some comfort. It was reviewed as part of the pandemic response by the resilience LRF, and it was found to be satisfactory. So there isn't an issue with it, but there is still learning to be done. So this is a document that's prepared in draft. It will go to the external audit with the statement of accounts for consideration. So I'm happy to take any questions on it, Chair.
Okay, has anybody got any questions on that for Chris?
The are 3 statutory officers work in a dual capacity. Okay, it's working. You say you had the resources to do it, but it's not quite 100%, is it? That you're all working in a dual capacity with another authority.
Is there a question in there? As a statement, yes. In that no single officer is working 100% for either authority of the statutory officers, but we have both myself, well, James currently does, but I have a deputy who is an experienced monitoring officer, so I'm comfortable that there will be sufficient resource there. Gary is obviously helping out with the Section 151 functions as needed, but James is doing a more than able job across the two authorities. But again, we're looking to recruit to the currently vacant post in due course and to ensure that that resource is there.
I'll be a little bit patronising at the moment, in that it all goes to show that... I
would expect nothing else.
That the chief officers of Chorley Borough Council are absolutely excellent, and we're lucky as an authority to have you. And it's like Chorley helping another council.
I've written it down as well.
Yeah, we're really proud. As I got my 80th birthday yesterday, I feel real proud to be a member of this authority. And with that, I think we can send this report for the signatures of the Chief Exec and the Leader of the Council, can't we?
Okay, so you proposed that, but I just want to double check that no one else has got any questions in the meantime. All quiet? Okay, so Councillor G has proposed that the draft governance statement is appended to the report, be approved and referred to the executive leader of the council and the chief executive for their signatures. Do we have a seconder for that?
I'll second that, Chair. Councillor Gordon Franz. I'm glad to see that Councillor G's a changed man.
Yeah, only briefly because of his birthday. He said so.
That's right, Chair. It must be his good day today.
Yeah, it is a good day today because I decided that next year I'll be 79.
You go that way, you are, I am.
So you'll be back to normal.
Excellent. So if we've got no dissenters, I pass over to Chris.
Thank you, Chair. The draft annual governance statement appended to the report is approved for signature by the exec leader of the council and chief exec, and to go to the external audit.
Thank you, Chris. So item 11, new model code of conduct 2020, to receive and consider the report of the director of governance. So it's Chris again.
Yes. Thank you, Chair.
Feeling the show?
Yes. I've not had enough to do recently, obviously. Right. The model code of conduct. There's been rumblings for some time, members of the committee will remember last year that a report came out from the Office for Standards in Public Life, raising some development points from the existing code of conduct and supporting procedures. That's led to a recommendation for a new code of conduct to be drafted, which is consistent across the whole country. And a piece of work has been commissioned, and a draft code of conduct has been produced. The message is coming out, and I apologise because this, for my report being a little bit confused as to what I'm asking members to do. But the messages coming out about this have been a bit confused as well, because we were told there was going to be consultation about it, and then all of a sudden we received a new model code of conduct and no details about the consultation that was going to be undertaken. So myself and some colleagues had a discussion about it and decided, well, this must be the recommended draft code of conduct. So the initial proposal for members today was to agree to adopt the new code of conduct. However, since the report's been prepared, we're now getting more detail about it, and it is still out for consultation. We don't have a closing date for consultation yet, but both myself and my colleague Dave Whelan at South Ribble have been invited to some consultation webinars to give some feedback on it. So what I'm actually asking members today really is to agree to feed back to me any observations on the form of the code of conduct and the content of the code of conduct, and I've also had conversations with the independent persons, and I would ask that they also be given authority to feed back to me with their feedback on it, and then I will prepare a response to the consultation and agree it with the chair of the committee. I would also propose to take it to both group leaders to enable them to share with their groups, because obviously, whilst it's not a political document, I think as wider consultation as we can undertake would be beneficial. My own views on it are that it is not a substantial departure from the existing code of conduct. It is perhaps a little bit clearer. It is perhaps a little bit better set out. But it does incorporate all the recommendations that the Office for Standards in Public Life made in their report last year. Now, some of those we'd already adopted and implemented in the Code of Conduct last year, so for Chorley Council it doesn't make a big change, but that was only done locally. If it is adopted nationally, then all councils will share a common code of conduct, which can only benefit both councillors of multiple authorities and the public, but it will also benefit parish councils, some of whom have done their own codes of conduct and perhaps are a little bit out of step with others, and it will just enable that consistency to be rolled out as well. So again, I apologise. Initially, the recommendation was to just accept this as a new draft code of conduct, but it is really to seek some to seek views of the committee and to delegate to myself and the chair the responding to the consultation.
Okay, I've seen the consultation, Chris, but obviously from another tier, and responded to it from the parish council level. So it is out there.
Right.
From a parish point of view, it is highly publicised and it's highly criticised as well,
right,
because there's no changes and there's no sanction improvements. So from a parish point of view, it's absolutely atrocious. Can I ask anybody else if you've got any comments about this point? All quiet. So I'm just seeking a recommendation that the committee is okay to submit some views and feedback to the consultation. That Chris is going to put this out the consultation to the groups and other members, and to delegate the response back to the people who are doing the consultation to me and Chris, which is the chair and Chris Meister. So, Councillor G, you're okay with that?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I move it.
Seconder?
I'll second it. Councillor Crenshaw.
Thank you, Councillor Crenshaw. So, do we have any dissenters on there? No, so over to Chris.
Thank you, Chair. The recommendation that members feedback through the monitoring officer to agree a response to the consultation on the draft code of conduct, such response to be agreed with the chair, is agreed.
Okay, thank you. So, item 12, the RIPA application update. The monitoring officer will present a verbal report. So, back over to Chris.
There have been no applications received in the last quarter, Chair, and just as a separate update, we are at the moment just in discussions with the Information Commissioner's Office around our latest RIPA audit. This is likely to be held remotely, as was the last one, and just based on the papers, on the understanding that we don't actually undertake any RIPA enforcement work. Okay,
so there's nothing to note there, so we'll skip over the agreeing that. So item 13, the work programme. That's pages 111 and 12. To receive and consider the draft work programme for the committee. I'm not sure if anybody's going to speak to this, so I'll just ask anybody if they've got any queries about it.
If I may, Chair, it's Mark calling. Yep. It's just probably worth updating the August meeting just to include the external audit plan.
Oh, right, yeah.
Thanks.
Sorry, Chair, it's Ruth here. I'm hoping that the date of the next Governance Committee will be the 27th of August, but I'm just waiting on confirmation, and meeting requests will be sent out to the committee shortly. Thank you.
Okay, so we've got no more queries on that.
No.
No, so
we've done the report.
So can we have a proposal to note the work programme? Yep, Councillor G.
Yep.
Can we have a seconder for that?
I'll second that, Councillor Gordon-France.
Thank you, Councillor France. No dissenters. Over to Chris.
Thank you, Chair. The work plan has been received and noted.
Thank you for that. So we now jump to item 14. Any urgent business previously agreed by the chair, I haven't had anything. So if no one has got anything to raise, which is absolutely urgent, because you should have told me about it before. No? Okay, I declare the meeting closed. If ICT can please stop recording, please. Thank you, and thank you to everybody for